Come late September, Pittsburgh will be welcoming the world when the G20 Economic Summit turns up in our region. We're back with Jim Rohr of PNC talking about what all this really means. I mean, in your circles, the global financial circles, the G20 is an enormously big deal, and the issues they're coming here to talk about are important.
Oh, this is a spectacular win for Pittsburgh, and I think it's really, really terrific that we're able to host the G20. I think the president did us a big favor by choosing us, and the whole world will now have their eyes on Pittsburgh in a way that they haven't had for a century. So I think it's really going to be a great thing for the city.
You know, Dan Onrado was talking about it in the first segment. We were joking a little bit about the reaction of the White House press corps and some of the chuckles. Should those of us who live in the region be surprised that Pittsburgh would be chosen for something like this?
Those of us who live in the region, I think, to some extent, don't really appreciate what a wonderful, wonderful story Pittsburgh is. I mean, the idea that it was named the most livable city twice in 7 years, people just kind of think, well, oh, okay, well, that's fine. It's not just fine, it's spectacular. I mean, we are one of the safest cities in the country, if not the world. We have arguably the best healthcare system in the country, if not the world. When you look at the educational institutions that we have, when you look at the cultural district, which has been named the #1 cultural district in the United States, when you look at the baseball park, which is the #1 baseball park in the world, when you look at the Steelers or the Penguins, or the fact that we have the shortest commute, or the best view of Pittsburgh is the best view in the United States is the view from Mount Washington. There's just a lot of really great things, never mind all this, how you can entertain yourself with the arts, the various arts groups and the countryside. I mean, it's really a unique place. And I think it's a great recognition that the world will be able to come to Pittsburgh and see it.
Well, and probably a lot of credit goes to all for making it possible. It's really a story that began, in the depths of what happened here in the 1980s. You've been here through this whole period of time. What do you think was the secret for Pittsburgh and this recovery and transformation? Does any one thing stand out?
I think that's, we've all been asked, who had the magic key to the G20 and who was the one that was able to make it happen. And I really don't think any one person, I've looked, that any one person did it. I think it's actually Pittsburgh itself. If we didn't have, years ago, the Heinz Foundation said that when we were going to build the convention center, it had to be green. I don't think any of us knew what that meant at the time. I'm positive that we don't have the G20 because we have a green convention center, but I'm also positive that if we didn't have a green convention center, we wouldn't have the G20. If we hadn't spent $700 million, if the Cultural Trust hadn't spent $700 million in the cultural district, changing it from the cesspool that it was, quite frankly, and Jack Heinz's vision, a number of people, lots and lots of people who contributed to transforming that, we never would have put a green convention center in downtown. Alcoa wouldn't have put their building on the north side to connect to what had been that district. I don't know that we would have remade all of the North Shore to connect it to that. So if we have a 7.5% unemployment rate, it's 2 full percentage points below the 9.5% that the country has. That's an example of how a city that was tied to one industry, although we still have steel and it's a very important part of our region, we've diversified dramatically, and as you said, last August we had the highest employment in the history of the region. It has remade itself in a way that almost no other city in the world has, and all of these pieces come together. And I have to thank you, because I think one of the really unique things was the 250th. And you were the key person and drove the Allegheny Conference and the whole region on the 250th last year. The Imagine campaign, and sometimes the city doesn't realize, it was the #1 marketing campaign in the entire advertising campaign in the entire country last year. It was recognized. That 250th gave us visibility that we never had before in the country because we've never really spent the money to do that. And when you think, we're PNC's now large in Washington, D.C., as part of the 250th, we opened the Great Allegheny Passage, as you know. It got an enormous amount of visibility in Washington, D.C., where this decision was made. Get a lot of visibility here, but we didn't realize how much visibility it got there. And then we were talking that, you remember we tried to get the presidential debate last September.
It's true. A big push by the region.
And so you and a number of other people, along with University of Pittsburgh, went down to Washington to try and get the presidential debate. The worker bees, if you will, from Washington came to Pittsburgh, were very impressed with the city, went back and told everybody. Now, we didn't get the debate, but when you just think about the mosaic of pieces that have come together in order to create a different image and a new image of Pittsburgh, given what Pittsburgh is, came together in a way that really, I think, made it obvious that Pittsburgh is a great choice for the G20.
Well, really exciting. Jim Rohr from PNC, and for everything you guys have done, too, to remake downtown and drive the regional economy. I guess everybody, we all deserve a pat on the back.
We all deserve. I think that we said there might be 100 people raised their hand and said they were responsible, and they're probably, oh, not last but not least, you know, Dan Rooney, of course, being named ambassador to Ireland.
Didn't hurt at all.
He had a piece of it, too.
All right, Jim, thanks so much. Good to see you.
Bill, thank you.
And we'll be back in a minute with a little dollars and cents. Stay with us.